Hey everyone, this is Miss Ava Hart, and today is Sunday, September the 27th, 2020, and it is 12:30 p.m. These are your class notes for the week of Monday, September 28th, 2020. You will need these notes for a quiz that will be assigned next week. You will need these notes for a quiz that will be assigned next week. Once again, you will need these notes for a quiz that will be assigned next week. So make sure you listen to this video, you understand what each term means, and you understand the examples being given. All right, so before we begin the class notes, here is your moment of inspiration. Hey, Black Child by County Cullen. Hey, Black Child, do you know who you are, who you really are? Do you know you can be what you want to be if you try to be what you can be? Hey, Black Child, do you know where you are going, where you're really going? Do you know you can learn what you want to learn if you try to learn what you can learn? Hey, Black Child, do you know you are strong? I mean, really strong. Do you know you can do what you want to do if you try to do what you can do? Hey, Black child, be what you can be. Learn what you must learn. Do what you can do. And tomorrow your nation will be what you want it to be. All right, so let's look at, these are terms that as you transition into 10th grade, you should know. Not only should you know the definition of these terms, but you should also know how to identify them and yes, how to identify them. So if you saw an example of them, you would know exactly what your professional instructor is talking about. So by the time you leave ninth grade, these terms should be familiar to you. When I say these terms, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You'll be able to identify examples of these terms. And when you enter into 10th grade, these terms are not foreign to you. You'll know exactly what the professional instructor is telling you or saying to you when you hear these terms because you've been introduced to them. Not only have you been introduced to them in ninth grade, but you can identify examples of these terms. Okay, so remember, you are going to need these class notes for the quiz next week. Okay, so first one is baseline assessment. Some of your teachers may refer to this as a pretest. Pretest, baseline assessment, they're pretty much saying the same thing. So a baseline assessment is to find out a pupil is another word for student. So to find out a pupil's or student's learning needs, their natural ability, and potential. Remember, I told you this last week before you took your 2 baseline assessments. It's for me to know what you know. Baseline assessments or pretests was a way for me to gather information to know what you've already learned, what you've remembered from 8th grade, and what I need to teach you moving forward. So, 2 examples of a baseline assessment or a pretest was one around the family drum. You had to read this text and then you had to write a written response. You had to tell me what the central idea was of this text, and you had to give me textual evidence to prove what you said the central idea was. So I was giving you a pretest to see if you could identify the central idea and whether or not you could prove from the text what you said the central idea was. That was the purpose of that baseline assessment. Most of you did really well on that. In November, we're going to go back to written responses or writing prompts, and I'm going to strengthen your writing to help you write in complete sentences, to help you write a thesis statement, to help you use transition words when you're writing, all of that. But for the most part, Most of you could identify the central idea of around the family drum, and most of you could provide textual evidence from the text to support what you said the central idea was. All right, departure. Now that one I'm going to have to really go back through because a lot of you need help. That was the second, departure was the second baseline assessment. For that baseline assessment, you had to read a text, answer some multiple choice questions, and you had to write a written response. Most of you didn't even write the written response. And it is my belief that you didn't write the written response because you didn't understand the question. So I'm going to have to go back in November and reteach that to show you the mistakes that you made and to reteach that particular concept. All right, so departure, that baseline assessment or that pre-assessment, I wanted to know, could you define vocabulary as it was used in the text? That was the chart on number 4 on the assessment. That was number 4, where you had to complete the chart, put in 3 vocabulary words, and then give textual evidence to support your vocabulary words. So most of you need help with vocabulary in context. So we're going to work on that. How do you define words without the use of a dictionary, without the use of Google, your phone, the internet? The only way that you can define the word is that you have to use context clues. So we're going to have to work on that. Textual evidence. That baseline assessment was to assess whether or not you knew how to use textual evidence to support your claim. The author's purpose. Many of you had difficulty finding or identifying the author's purpose and providing textual evidence to support the author's purpose. So we're going to have to work on that. But that will be in November when we go back to these particular concepts, and I'll teach these concepts, give you examples, and then give you another try at identifying these examples, and after I teach it, to see if you understand it. Okay, so we'll do that in November. So that is what baseline assessments are, and those were your examples. All right, annotation. Annotation. You're going to be doing annotation, a lot of annotation this card mark or this semester. Off the top of my head, there are 3 texts. One is nonfiction. No, 2 of them are nonfiction, and one of them is a poem, and you will have to annotate those texts. Annotation means to leave your mark with the text. Marking up a text and or marking notes. That should say so that we can better comprehend what we read. Having a written conversation with the text. Text messaging with the text. That's how I like to describe annotation. So annotation is where you leave your mark with the text. You're marking up a text and or marking notes so that we or you can better comprehend what we or you read. Let me change it to we to you. I like to describe annotation as having a written conversation with the text, text messaging with the text. And I'm going to show you how to annotate in detail when it's time for that assignment. But here's the example I like to give with annotation. I like to give a real life example of dating. Most of the time, when students read a text, whether it's nonfiction, fiction, poetry, a play, a short story, a novel, whatever it may be, most of the time students just read it and they just look at the words and then that's it. They don't engage with the text. So I like to give the example of dating. If you're interested in someone, you're not just going to, if you ask them out on a date, you're not just going to look at them and just stare at them and not say anything. But unfortunately, when students read, like I said, when they read a poem or a play or a short story or an informational text, they just look at the words and they don't engage with the words. They don't have conversation with the words. They just look at the words. And then when you ask them, well, what did you just read? Tell me what you just read. What was the author's purpose for writing what you just read? Prove it. Give me some textual evidence to prove that you know what the author's purpose was or is. That, and most students have a hard time answering those questions because all they did was just look at the text. They just stared at it. They may have heard the teacher reading it, but they really didn't engage with the text and have conversation with the text. So it's just like going on a date. When you're on a date, you're not just going to just stare at the person and just look at them and not say anything. You're going to ask questions. You're going to ask questions to get to know them better. And in your mind, you're going to keep notes. You're going to keep track of what they told you. You're going to make a mental note of what their favorite color is, what their favorite movie is, what their favorite food is, what do they like to do in their spare time. Like, you're going to make mental notes. You're just not just going to sit there. You're not going to just sit there and just stare at them and not say anything. So that's how I like to describe annotation. If you go out on a date, you're not just going to look at the person and just stare and not say anything. You're going to ask questions. You're going to interact with them. You're going to engage them in conversation. And you're going to keep mental notes of what they said or what they did during the date. The same with annotation. When you're reading the text, have a conversation with the text in your head. Mark up the book or mark up the text. Take notes. Write down things that you don't understand. Circle words that you don't know the meaning of and stop and go look up those words. If you have questions about what you're reading, write those questions down. If something that you read surprised you or shocked you, underline that and say why it surprised you or shocked you. Now, I'm going to show you exactly how to do that next week, but that's what annotation is. It's engaging with the text. And it's like you're actually it's like you're actually text messaging with the text because you're using not necessarily emojis, but you're using different pictures or symbols to indicate the symbols mean certain things, and I'll go into that next week. But it's you're having a conversation with the text. You're becoming engaged with the text. You're just not looking at the words, or if you have the text read to you, you're just not listening to the words and that's it. You're actually having a conversation with the text. That's how I like to describe annotation. And next week, I'm going to show you, I have a completely different lesson of actually how to annotate a text. All right, next one is textual evidence. Textual evidence is using evidence from the text to support your claim. So if you are reading a story and you say that the author says that the sky is blue. All right, if we were together face to face, I would say, okay, well, prove that to me. You're telling me that the author said that the sky is blue. I want you to go back to the text and prove to me that the author said that the sky is blue. That's what textual evidence is. You have to go back to the text to find something that the writer wrote to support your claim. If you say that the author is mad at his mother, then I would say, okay, give me some textual evidence. Go back to the text and prove to me that the author is mad at his mother. And you will go back to the text and find me some lines in the text to show that he is mad at his mother. That's textual evidence. If you're not able to support your claim from the text, then basically you can't expect anybody to believe you. Like, it's not about agreeing or disagreeing. It's about proving your point. Now, somebody may agree with you or somebody may disagree with you. And if they disagree with you or agree with you, then they have to go back to the text and find evidence to support why they agree with you or why they disagree with you. But it's not about really having people agree or disagree. If we were in class and we had a discussion, then yeah, we could say, okay, well, I disagree with you, and I disagree with you because the text says this. But really, textual evidence is just to prove your point. If you cannot go back to this, if you make a certain claim and you can't back it up from the text using textual evidence, then don't expect anybody to support your claim or to believe your claim. It's just like a lawyer. When a lawyer is defending his or her client, they have to have proof. They have to have evidence. If they're saying that their client is not guilty, they have to have evidence to show the jury why their client is not guilty. It's the same thing with reading a text. If you say the author is mad at his mother, then you need to go back to the text and prove that the author is mad at his mother. And you need to repeat word for word what the author wrote in the text to prove that he is mad at his mother. All right, so here is an example. I'm going to read this, and then we're going to do two examples. Plato's story of Atlantis is less about a lost civilization than it is about the virtue of the Athenians, and scholars believe that Atlantis never in fact existed, but was a literary creation on the part of Plato. Atlantis has never been mentioned in any other Greek literature that has ever been found. In fact, for most of history, people have believed that Atlantis was a fictional place until the late 1800s when a writer named Ignatius Donnelly proposed that significant achievements of the ancient world, like metallurgy, agriculture, religion, and language, must have originated in Atlantis. His argument was that the known ancient civilizations weren't sophisticated enough to have developed these things on their own. Rather, they were given to them by some more intelligent civilization. Donnelly's ideas capture enough of the imagination of others for later writers to add their own speculations. Mystics and psychics, well known at the time, jumped on the bandwagon, helping to popularize the idea of there having been a real Atlantis. All right. Now, first question, what do scholars believe that Atlantis, why do scholars believe that Atlantis was a fictional place created by Plato? Now, that's the question, and you must answer the question using textual evidence. So, I'm going to give you some time to see if you can find the textual evidence to answer this question. Why do scholars believe that Atlantis was a fictional place created by Plato? Now, I'm giving you examples because you're going to have to do this on the quiz. So this is why I'm doing this now with your class notes. So if you follow along with me and you do this activity with me, you'll be better prepared for the quiz next week. So the question is, why do scholars believe that Atlantis was a fictional place created by Plato? You must use textual evidence to support your answer. So I'm going to give you some time before I reveal to you the answer. Okay. So if this is your answer, you would have been correct. So let me scroll down. Scholars believe that Atlantis was a fictional place created by Plato for the reason being the text states Atlantis has never been mentioned in any other Greek literature that has ever been found. So if you pull that sentence out as proof, or as proof for your answer to this question, then you were correct. Notice that whenever you quote or whenever you provide textual evidence, you must put quotations. You must put quotations in front of the first word and behind the last word. That way you're giving credit to where you got the information from. If I don't see quotation marks, it means that you plagiarize. It means that you're taking something and you're saying that I wrote this. These are my thoughts. And you're plagiarizing, you're stealing from someone else. You must put quotation marks around the text that you copy, around the words that you copy from the text. So you put it in front of the first word and you put a quotation mark. You put a quotation mark in front of the first word and you put a quotation mark behind the last word of the sentence that you take from the text. So notice I answered the question using textual evidence. This is why scholars believe that Atlantis was a fictional place created by Plato, because it was never mentioned in any other Greek literature that has ever been found. These are the exact words of the author's. These are the exact words the author used when writing this. So I gave credit where credit was due. I put my quotation marks. All right, next one. The next question. If people understood that Atlantis was a fictional creation for thousands of years, what made people start to think that it had once really existed? So the question is, if people understood that Atlantis was a fictional creation for thousands of years, what made people start to think that it had once really existed? So go back to, now remember, you got to use textual evidence to answer that question. So go back to the text. I'm going to move up, let you look at the text again, and give you time to find the exact line from this text to answer the question. If people understood that Atlantis was a fictional creation for thousands of years, what made people start to think that it had once really existed? So go back up here to the text, read it again to see if you can find the line from the text to answer that question, because you must use textual evidence to answer that question. So I'll give you some time and then we'll see if your answer matches my answer. So once again, the question is, if people understood that Atlantis was a fictional creation for thousands of years, what made people start to think that it had once really existed? So what line in this text answers that question? I'll give you time. Okay. If you answered, here's the answer. What made people start to think that it had once really existed? Is a writer named Ignatius Donnelly proposed that significant achievements of the ancient world, like metallurgy, agriculture, religion, and language, must have originated in Atlantis. His argument was that the known ancient civilizations weren't sophisticated enough to have developed these things on their own, Rather, they were given to them by some more intelligent civilization. So if you chose those two sentences as your textual evidence to answer this question, then you were correct. Correct. All right, so that is textual evidence. Remember, the quiz is next week on these class notes. If you don't do well on the quiz, I'm going to know that you didn't listen and watch this video on class notes because I'm going through examples. I'm going through examples with you because you will have examples on your quiz next week. All right, central idea. As you move forward in your high school career, your professional instructors will expect you to be able to identify central idea. So central idea is the message that the author is trying to get across to the reader. The central idea is a sentence. Typically, it is a thesis statement. A thesis statement is one sentence telling the reader what the entire text is about. Let me repeat that. Central idea, the message that the author is trying to get across to the reader. The central idea is a sentence. Typically, the central idea is what we call in English or in writing the thesis statement. The thesis statement is one sentence telling the reader what the entire text is about. One more time, central idea. The message that the author is trying to get across to the reader. The central idea is a sentence. In the writing portion of English language arts, the central idea is the thesis statement. A thesis statement is one sentence telling the reader what the text is about. Okay, so here is an example. Let's see if you can identify the central idea in this paragraph. Wolverines are medium-sized animals. They weigh no more than 50 pounds, yet they have earned their reputation for ferocity by killing prey many times their size. But why do they get in so many fights? The reason why wolverines have so many conflicts with other animals, including wolves, cougars, and even bears, is probably because of the wolverine's preferred hunting style. Rather than chasing down or tricking its prey like most hunters, the wolverine prefers to take its meals directly from other hunters. So while a polar bear or a lone wolf might be enjoying a hard-earned carcass, a hungry wolverine may try to take his lunch. As you might imagine, this style of hunting get the wolverine in plenty of fights. So what is the central idea of this paragraph? I'll give you some time and let's see if your response matches with the correct response. All right. The central idea is wolverines get in so many fights. That is the central idea. Basically, this person wrote this paragraph to tell us that wolverines get in so many fights. That's why they wrote it. All this extra stuff, there's extra stuff in here. Some of it is relevant to the central idea, some of it is not. But the central idea is that wolverines get in so many fights. That's the reason why they wrote this. And to support it is rather than chasing down or trick, here's the textual evidence to support the central idea. Notice I quoted directly from the text. I put a quotation mark in front of the first word and behind the last word. These quotation marks let me know or let you know these are not my words. These are the words of the author, and I'm giving them credit. by using quotation marks. So rather than chasing down or tricking its prey like most hunters, the wolverine prefers to take its meals directly from other hunters. That is the reason why they get in so many fights. Because while a polar bear is sitting enjoying its lunch, here comes this wolverine and snatches its lunch. So the whole point of this, the entire point of this paragraph was just to show us that wolverines get in so many fights. And the reasons why they do so is, here's the textual evidence. Here's where I prove to you why this is the central idea. Okay. Now, and then here it is right here. Here's the thesis statement, but why do they get in so many fights? So I know when I read that this entire paragraph is telling me why wolverines get in so many fights. This is the thesis statement right here. Now they just happen to use a question, but usually a thesis statement is a sentence, it's not a question. But there you go. There's your example of central idea. All right, informational text. And when I post these notes for assignments, I'm going to attach a video. I'm going to attach a video for central idea. For those of you who are visual, maybe you need to see a video, some graphics, some pictures to explain central idea. Okay. And our last word is informational text. Now, in my next video today, we are going to read our first informational text. So, informational text educates the reader about a specific topic. Informational text is nonfiction, meaning it is true that everything mentioned in that text can be verified. It's facts. It's not opinions, it's facts. So informational text educates the reader about a specific topic. Usually informational text will only talk about one topic. And it's nonfiction. Nonfiction means that it is true and that the writer will give you plenty of facts about the topic, plenty of research about the topic. All right, usually you can find informational text in magazines and newspapers. You might even find them online in journals, scholarly journals, things of that nature. All right, informational text uses the following aids to help readers to follow along and get the information they need. Most of the time when you read an informational text, there will be pictures. If they are talking about, let's say, for instance, you're reading an article about the human cold, you will see pictures of the actual virus, the human cold virus. You will see pictures of people who have the human cold. You will see pictures of different healthcare remedies that you can use to get over the human cold. So usually in an informational text, in order for you to understand the information presented, the writer will use illustrations or graphics or pictures. And it will also be organized in a certain way. Usually it will be organized in chronological order. It'll go from number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Usually an informational text will give you specific information, like it will give you specific names. It will tell you exactly what books you can find the information that they quoted in. Like they will tell you, okay, go to this book to find out more information. And this person wrote this book. They're going to give you specific names. They're going to give you specific book titles, article titles. It's going to be very, very specific. They're going to tell you exactly where you can go to find out more information about this topic. They're going to tell you specific places, times, dates. Those are ways that the writer will help you to understand the topic. They'll give you specific dates, specific times, specific names, specific places. They'll give you specific titles of books or magazine articles where you can find out more information about the topic. Everything is very specific. It will also be written more often than not. It will also be written in chronological order. It will go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It won't jump around. It won't start at number 10 and then go to number 1 and then go back to number 2 and then go to number 5. Usually informational texts are written in chronological order. All right, so these are the words. And this right here is the URL where you can find the video about Central Idea, but that will be under resources and assignments on Teams. So you don't have to write that down. I just put this here as a reminder for me of what video I want you to watch. All right, so these are the words, some of the words that your 10th, 11th, and 12th grade teacher will expect you to know. Informational text, central idea, textual evidence, annotation, and baseline assessment or pretest. So those are the terms that you're expected to know once you leave 9th grade and go on to 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. So once again, it is baseline assessment, or your teacher may say a pretest, annotation, textual evidence, central idea, and informational text. Remember, next week you will have a quiz on these notes. And based on your grade, I'm going to know whether or not you even watched or listened to this video, because I gave you specific examples of certain words like central idea and textual evidence. So when you take the quiz, you will have examples in the on the quiz as well. And if you didn't watch this video, then if you didn't watch this video, then you will have a hard time with those examples on the quiz. And remember, informational text is nonfiction. So I'm going to give you a list of titles, and you have to tell me which one is an informational text. So please make sure that you watch this video and you understand the examples. All right, so that's it. Video number 2 for this week is we're going to actually read 1963, the year that changed everything. That is an informational text, and I will tell you the assignments that you have for that particular text. All right, I will talk to you on the next video.